I am so grateful for one, this incredible community that we have, but also two, we have brought something brand new where we are spotlighting our community because we want to showcase all testimonies that are inside of it. We all know the Bible is purely phenomenal with testimonies, and that's what drives us is our stories and other people's stories, so we can lean into them, learn from them, hear from them, so then we don't feel alone or we get encouraged. And so that is why we are so grateful to have Alissa on this call tonight to kind of share her journey, where she's at, what God has done, all the furry animals she has that I cannot wait to maybe hug and love on one day, because apparently she has several. And I'm just going to ask her certain questions, and we're going to get to hear her journey. And then if you guys have questions at the end that you want to ask, that's what we're here for, so that people can lean in and learn from each other on this. So Alissa, I would love to first share, thank you, one, for coming and taking your time away today. And then two, I would love to hear kind of a little bit about you. Tell people about your story, what brought you into where you're at today and what God has done.
Absolutely. I didn't warn you, Cassie. Like when I start talking, you're gonna have to stop me to get questions in sometimes because there's just so much to share.
Bring it.
I I love that you said learning about stories because something I have started taking on as part of my identity as a child in Christ is being a story collector. And I think that is one of those powerful things that we all need to do, both in our businesses, but also in our faith life. Part of my story is learning to really lean into gratitude. And part of that gratitude is collecting stories. And so as you hear my story and the other amazing people that are doing this over the next few weeks, write them down, write our names down, Facebook friend us, because if our story doesn't resonate with you, it will resonate with somebody. And I can tell you for me and for everybody else that's ever going to talk on here, if we didn't want our stories known, we wouldn't be sharing them. And so you can pester and you can share. And sometimes just the fact that you can say, hey, I know somebody somewhere up in Canada that has a whole bunch of animals and God did really amazing things in her life. Maybe I should connect with you. Would you like to hear her story? And so being a story collector is just one of the most powerful things you can do. And I mean, like you were saying before, Cassie, before we recorded, Jesus told stories, right? Stories are the most effective way to communicate. And that is something I think is really beautiful. So my story, I have, how far do we go back? So let's go back a little further. I had forgot about this. I, in a sense, grew up network marketing. My dad did network marketing since the day I was born. I remember him going out and doing the old school meetings and, going to friends' houses, and there was the whiteboard and the kids were not allowed to go upstairs because dad was showing the plan. I remember having a vision board and all those things. And through that journey, I look back now and see I was so grateful that I had these tidbits of personal growth. Not a lot of people's dads, on the drive home from grandma's house, would put Zig Ziglar in. And it took me years and years to realize the impact that had on my life and to appreciate it, the stories. But now I can look back and appreciate it. So my essentially network marketing journey began way back. But here is the thing I have learned is that God's timing is everything. It would have been easy for me to just jump into the company, right? Knowing that this was essentially what it was. But God said no in a very clear way. And it was actually through me and my husband discussing how we would never, ever, ever do network marketing. There was a number of reasons. We had friends who had a company that they had to do samples all the time, and she went $30,000 in debt. I grew up watching my dad, working his butt off, and then because of the compensation plans, never going anywhere. And so, to be honest, 9 years ago, I had a really bad taste in my network marketing um, palette, you could say. And so the reason I share that is because each one of you are going to talk to people who are like, yeah, no, never, not going to do this. Give them time, show them what you do is different, and love them well, because you do not know who they are and how God is going to use your faithfulness to what he's called you to change their lives. And about 8 years ago now, the company that I'm with that does natural supplements walked through my door. Essentially, it was a Facebook post, and I was just like, oh, I might need that. I might need that. So I wrote my friend. She's a college friend, hadn't talked to her in years. And she shared a little bit, and I was like, ooh, cat, no, can't do that. There's just no way in our budget right now that we could swing anything. Want it? Sorry, no. And the funny thing is, my terror over asking my husband to have that kind of money to take care of myself, right? Like that was really the way. It wasn't necessarily like where are we going to find the funds, but the fact that I would, the fear of wanting something and just being able and going before my husband's like, hey, is there a way we can do this? So we went back and forth over the space of 3 months, and I was pregnant with our fourth daughter. And finally, I was just like, you know what? I can't get this out of my head. In an absurd way, I can't get this out of my head. And I knew that if this company was who they said that they were, then it was something that I would actually want to get involved in. So there was a second conversation that I was going to have with my hubby about our actually, I do want to do network marketing. And so I share this again because when people tell you no, you never know the underlying reasons. Love them well, send them stories. That is what the girl who got me started did. She just every couple of months, she's like, oh, here's another story about somebody in pregnancy. And by the way, I know you don't have money, but you could do this. But you could do this. She breathed life and vision. And so, sure enough, 8 years ago, I remember crying in the shower and being like, Lord, I want to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. You're going to have to make the way. And I would love to tell you that it has all been roses and sunshine then, but I have learned a few things and I'm excited. Hopefully, they'll resonate with you. So, when I got started, the third person that I signed up, her life changed completely. And so, one of the things I really want you to grasp from my story is that early on, I don't care if you are 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days into network marketing or 20 years. I really encourage you guys to lean deep into prayer and ask the Lord to give you a vision for what He's called you to. Because I can tell you, when you are stepping into something new, anytime you step into something new, you're going to face pushback. You are going to hit walls. I've been deep diving into Genesis 1 recently, and I don't think we all realize that when it says the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters, waters in Hebrew is chaos. The Lord entered into chaos. He entered into pushback. He entered into the mess to make something out of it. When we step into doing our businesses every single day, I mean, this is not just day one, but it's day 101, 1001. We need to say, hey, there's going to be pushback. When the Lord and Savior came on there, I can tell you, you all know this, it wasn't smooth sailing. It was pushback. It was um, anger against him. It was lies against him. So why do we think that our calling and stepping into that is going to be any different? Right. And so for me, some of that pushback came from my husband. I didn't post on social media for the first year. He's like, you know what? Sure, fine. You want to do this? Go find strangers to talk to, but don't talk to friends and family and don't post on the internet. And I was like, gonna make some things a little bit tricky. But I did it. I managed to get to gold because you know what? God has the people, right? When you step out in faith, He's going to bring the people. And yeah, it might take a lot of no's. We'll talk about that in a bit, but He has the people. And so one day, I was maybe 2 months in, I was selling maternity clothes. And the lady from my church came to pick up the maternity clothes for me and said, hey, you're pregnant. Do you have a really great prenatal? Because I sell a really great prenatal. Would you like information? 8 years later, she's still ordering for me. Could I have planned that? No, I hadn't even met her before that point. A couple months later, and it wasn't easy, right? But so often when you lean into something that God has called you to with faith and with courage, doors open that you don't expect. And so I remember just like another story is I was at a trampoline park and I twisted my ankle and I was just talking to this lady and I just now looking back, it's the silliest thing I could have ever said. But it was essentially like, yeah, I sprained my ankle. I'd be jumping with the kids, but I sprained my ankle. But don't worry about me. I'm on really good supplements and they're helping. And she went, oh, tell me about these supplements. Right. And so I could not have seen that. I could not have seen those people that needed what I had when I started. One of the things I love to tell the team that I have that's just a beautiful, amazing team is that anytime you are hungry for more, you're going to have to push outside of your comfort zone because God is continually stretching us. And one of the reasons that God's given us these dreams and desires, and I think about where I was back then. I remember the days of crying because we needed new tires and not knowing how we were going to afford them. I remember the days of going to the grocery store and walking past all the strawberries that my 2-year-old would have loved, that I knew were nutritious and delicious, to the deep, deep discount rack, where you're probably still paying as much for good banana or good strawberry because you throw half of them out and it takes you 2 hours to sort through them, but at least it felt within your budget, right? I remember those days. And yet, in that all, God started lighting a fire. And I think one of the most beautiful gifts that God gave me was the lighting of fire for more. That vision that no, there is something more. There is something to push you further. But here's the thing, that more is always on the other side of our comfort zone. Nobody ever gets rich, blesses people abundantly, collects these kinds of stories, and has an impact on the world eating ice cream, watching Netflix. You show me one person who's sitting and watching Netflix right now or living their social media online life and not living a real life, who is growing in the word, who's growing in the trust of the Lord, and who is walking in faith and seeing God show up. So I personally think that God gives us these visions, these goals, this desire for more in life, which is a very biblical thing, right? To pursue more, to serve more. He gives us those things and he sticks them outside of our comfort zone so that we have to step out of our comfort zone and courage so that we grow in ways that he wants us to grow. Friends, we look at our businesses as something of monetary value, of providing for our family. God looks at our businesses as, how am I going to mold you? What ways do I have for you to serve? I'm going to mold you more in my likeness and step you more into who I have called you to be. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. If his goal for us was just to be wealthy and pay off our houses and buy our kids strawberries, he could do that. Like, I'd just go get a lottery ticket. He can provide and we're good. But he has so much more for us. He has so much more for us and things that are so much more value, which is the growing. And so if you take away anything from all this, know that on the other side of your comfort zone, that where God is calling you into, it's so worth stepping into. And I've also found that it's on the other side of the comfort zone where you see God show up in ways that you don't expect. So I think I'm working my business, but God is revealing to me who he is in ways that I don't know. One of the coolest experiences I ever had was a couple of years ago. We were at our convention, and that was one of those things. Like, I'd never made it to a convention. Finances had been tight. I had to say no. Um, but this year we could go. And I had some new teammates there, and we were like super duper excited. And that first night, I had tried to get some, we had an Airbnb. I had tried to get some groceries delivered. And because I'm in Canada, because I haven't really introduced myself, we'll get there. I'm in Canada. Um, it is like my credit card. And so I had the order I expected didn't show up. So we did another order that night, 9 o'clock at night. This young guy drops off our Costco groceries. And as he's leaving, he's like, have a blessed day. And there are times, friends, when God is going to say things through you. He is going to spit words out of your mouth that you don't expect because you have willingly stepped out of your comfort zone. And I grabbed that door handle. I said, hey, wait, you just said blessed. Do you know Jesus? And he said, I do know Jesus in the deep depths of my heart. Do you know Jesus in the deep depths of your heart? And then one of my teammates, Ashley, she's amazing. She's a missionary. And so she popped her head around the corner. Said, are we talking about Jesus? I love talking about Jesus. Can I talk about Jesus? Friends, I was there for our company's convention. And what happened was 2 hours of praying over a young man who had just picked up a ring that he was going to propose to his girl, and he was shaking and excited. And they had a plan to go on the mission field. And here's my friend pouring life in to this young man who had been just wrestling with things. And then as we were leaving, he's like, you know what? I was reading my Bible this morning. And it hit me how often the women ministered. And like, I still get goosebumps telling this. How often it was the women who ministered to Jesus. And now here I am doing Costco deliveries, talking to some of the most godly women who are pouring life and praying over me like a brother in Christ. Like, what even is this? And friends, that's a gift that stepping out in courage and building my business brought to me. I couldn't have planned that. I could never have dreamed of that. But it was such a beautiful gift of God showing, hey, this is where I have you. And the people that we're giving a ministry to and love on, they're not all going to be on your team. They're not all going to be on your customers, but it's going to be because you're moving and I can put you in the place where I have you. Speaking of places where he has me, when I started with my company, which is really hard not to say the name of your company, but I've tried. I've tried. When I started my company, my vision was strawberries, pay for winter tires, that vehicle I knew we needed, and just some margin in our budget. I didn't realize that my stepping out in faith would then trickle into my husband's boldness and courage in stepping out in faith, my children seeing it and growing in that, and the Lord leading us into a space that we had never dreamed possible, but had hungered for. I don't know if you guys are like me, where you, with your husband, you have those long term, eventually dreams where you really don't think they're ever going to happen, but you'd like them to. So you talk about them because at least it gives you something to dream about. For us, it was small acreage, bunch of animals, kids running barefoot, grow some flowers, that kind of stuff. And we had talked about it ever since we were first married. But, we are pinching pennies here, people. We are pinching pennies. And so you talk about it, but always in your back, you're like, that's going to take a miracle. Well, we serve a God who does miracles. And sometimes those miracles come in the form of nudging you to take action on your desires and reach out and help and love people. So, about 5 years into my network marketing business, I had reached the third highest rank in the company, which it felt like forever in the 4 years. But now I look back, I'm like, that was such a blessing. I had a strong leader. Things were going great. God dropped a bombshell in our lives. We had friends who were basically said, hey, we want to go church planting. And my first thought was like, we're going too. And my husband came in the door. I'm like, guess what? They're going to church planting in Colorado. And he's like, well, when do we leave? They can't do this alone. And we looked at each other. And so we're in Canada. They were going to Colorado, which in 2022, if you remember all the chaos of the world in 2022. And yet we felt this peace that we did not understand. And so we talked to our kids and said, hey, our friends Colton and Meredith, they want to go church planting in Colorado. You want to go? And they're like, yeah, we do. We serve a good God. Side note, if you're not reading missionary stories or watching missionary videos and talking continually about what life in Christ looks like with your kids, you are missing out in so many ways. It is so powerful to give them the courage to know, to normalize a life for Christ and what it looks like in stepping out in courage. So here we are. We are living in Kamloops, British Columbia. Overnight, our house was listed. We bought a massive 42-foot RV. God blessed us with a truck back in 22 when it was impossible. And we just took off. We gave away or sold everything that we had. But I still had my home-based business that I could use Starlink and do from anywhere. Such an incredible blessing. The finances. If my husband, he was able to work online for a while. If he'd have lost his business, it'd have been tight. But we would have been okay. Did I know that 5 years before that God was calling us into this grand adventure and that this was the thing that was going to enable us to go? No idea. I like to talk about my business as like life insurance, but not just life insurance for your life, but like the insurance that's going to set you up for what God's calling you into. Dream insurance. Is that a better word? Call it dream insurance, right? Vision insurance, because you don't know what God's doing.
Well, it's insurance to allow you to enjoy life.
Yes. Yes. Totally. Enjoy and step out in crazy ways and bless people in crazy ways. So stepping out, moving into the RV, heading to Colorado, took a crazy twist and turn on us. And we ended up getting blocked at the border and stuck in a small town in Saskatchewan called Weyburn that I hadn't even known existed, but I could look back and see how God had ended us up here. 5 months we tried to cross the border. 5 months of not knowing where we were going, plugging away in my little business because God was still providing, making connections, not knowing what we were going to do until one day God just opened the doors and here was this acreage. It was actually one of the guys from our church was like, have you really prayed through that? Like, maybe God's called you to Weyburn? And my husband laughed and said, it's not like God, no, drop the perfect acreage in our lap, By that point, our friends we were going church and planting with, they'd have a change in plans. We didn't really know what we were doing. So the next morning, I opened up the website, and here was this gorgeous yellow house, 102 years old, fully renovated, on 11 acres, with water and trees and all the things that we had talked about for the last 10 years of our marriage. Remember going back to that vision and the dream? You don't know everything, down to a treehouse for kids with a design. And here it was in this random little town in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. And so now when I talk to people, I cannot emphasize enough that the way you show up faithfully in your business today is going to be the thing that opens the door to you 5, 10.
Hey girl, you're cutting in and out. I thought it was me because I'm in a storm, but it's you and now you're frozen. So I just wanted to let you know. Maybe turn off your Wi-Fi or turn it back on. Maybe. Okay, I would love to hear until she comes back.
Oh,
What is there you are. Maybe.
I can't see you, but I can hear you, but you're,
Oh,
oh, there we go.
there you are. All right, keep going, girl.
Talk too fast, Zoom can't keep up. Goodness. No, I hope goodness. I get fired up telling the story, so I hope you are too. Okay. So, I think what I was saying is I encourage everybody when you wake up, when you open your phone, when you're going for that coffee, to think of it not just in the perspective like, how can I serve today? But how is God going to use this to help me serve somebody 5, 10, 15 years?
Oh no, enemy, no, you cannot have this moment. Bring her back.
Okay. I
Where?
see
There
you
she
moving in.
is. Okay.
And I'm on like data. I'm not even on my Wi-Fi. So that's weird. Usually it's okay.
You're fine right now. Let's just keep
We'll
going.
keep talking. Keep going. Okay. So you're thinking about the future. We do this now because we don't know what God has for us in the future. And our faithful seeds now open the doors that He knows is waiting for us. So we're living in Weyburn. We got this beautiful little thing, and life feels amazing. But guess what? Our journeys never look linear. I mean, if you haven't been alive for more than 2 minutes, you know that life never looks linear. And so, my beautiful level one, who I had not relied on, but I had been able to kind of coast along, she decided to take a step back from my business, our business, right? And good for her, love her to bits. It's all good. But I woke up and I started seeing, for us, we have a back office, and the points were going down, and the points were going down, and the points were going down. And all that trust and faith that God had built up suddenly had to be put to the test. Where suddenly I was like, okay, but Lord, now is more than ever, we need this money. Where's it going to come from? Now, Lord, more than you brought us to this place, are you not going to provide? And what I didn't realize then is that God was moving me into a season where um, there was so much that He had for me. So much. Like, it's hard to say when you look back at a hard season, thank you, Lord. But it's one of the what's of the most amazing things you can do. Because when you can say thank you, Lord, for a hard season, you're saying that I understand that there's so much more going on behind the scenes than you think. I think that God really has given us three things to mold us and shape Him into His likeness. One is a spouse. If you have a spouse, you know that it changes you from the inside out because it reflects a mirror of who you are and the things that God is rooting out of you. The second is kids. If you've had kids, you know that they are a refining substance from the Lord, right? They change you because, again, they show you who you actually are and how needy you are of the Lord. And I fully believe that business is the third thing that God uses to refine us because we are continually called to step out in courage and to face fear. to step out in courage and to face fear. And there are very few things in this world that will call us out that way. And so I went into a season of first having to wrestle with feeling that loss and with grieving, and then realizing that, okay, but God is not done with me yet. He is not done with me in my business. He's not done with me and my people, but I needed to grow. And so I tell my team analogies all the time because I can relate to them. And one that I love to share is I live in Saskatchewan. And so maybe you haven't all seen a Saskatchewan winter, which is like 3 feet of snow and a lot of dead trees. But I see it for about 6 months out of the year. It's a long winter. Like, here's what hit me the other day, or this past year, is that when I look out in the streets, I would see death. I would see not going anywhere. You're welcome to come visit, Christy. You're welcome. Winter's around the corner. I see, and people from the outside, you can't tell an actual dead tree from a dormant tree. Like, they just look pointless. But here's the thing, just like with us, in that season, God is digging the roots deeper. That is not a dead tree. That is a tree whose roots are going deeper and deeper. And you know the difference between a tree with deep roots between versus a tree with shallow roots? They can weather storms. They can weather the wind, and their canopy spreads wider, and the tree grows taller, which means it's serving more people. It's ready for shade. It becomes its own ecology of animals and bugs to thrive. And the tree with deep roots is able to love and provide and show God's goodness in a way that a tree without roots will never do. And so, friends, if you are going through a season in your marriage, your family, or your business right now where things feel dead, say, Lord, it's dark, but I know in the darkness is where you are pushing my roots down. And I want to be a tall tree. I want to be a canopy that's spread over and affects people in my team, outside my team, for the love of Jesus and shows his honor and glory. But that doesn't happen in your summer months. That happens in the winter months. And so for me, the last few years has been a season of digging roots and what one would call rebuilding, but really is just a renewing and of seeing who God's bringing into my business and what he's doing and learning to rely on him in new ways that I didn't have to in the thriving season. I didn't have to in the growing season. But I can tell you that it's in this season where I've learned more about who he's created me to be than I ever had. It's in this season that I've learned how to communicate, and I've learned that I love doing this. I love coaching. I love getting on Zooms. If you haven't noticed, this gives me energy, speaking truth. It's part of who God's created me to be. If I could have coasted along to the top of my company, I'd never have been given that gift. And this is the gift that I know that God is going to use for his honor and glory for decades inside and outside my business. The other thing that tell my team all the time that's really resonated with me lately is God has put so many principles into his word and into his creation that we can take and then realize that they apply to us too. And one of those things is gravity. I actually tell my kids all the time this. Like, I have a 9-year-old son. He's actually having a birthday party right now. And the other day, we were talking about responsibility and gravity. And I said, okay, how much gravity does a baseball have? And he's like, not really anything. No gravity there. He's like, okay, how much gravity does the earth have? He's like, oh, tons of gravity. It holds us. The moon is attached to it. And I'm like, okay, how much gravity does the sun have? And he's, oh, a lot of gravity, right? It attracts and it pulls into its orbit. As believers, we are called to be ever increasing our gravity to become bigger, more filled with who Jesus is with the Holy Spirit, more filled with impact, able to pull into our orbit bigger people who then have more impact. And so one of the focuses for me in this past year has been like, okay, how do I increase my gravitational force? It's being in the word, friends. If you didn't know, it's being in the word. It's leaning deep into who God has created me to be, not anybody else, but just learning who I have been created to be. It's long showers of prayer and thinking. If you don't have thinking on your IPA sheet, you should probably put it on there because we don't do nearly enough of it. honestly, we don't sharpen our minds. We don't lean into the Lord. We don't give our time just to like gnaw on scripture and see how that applies to our business. And when you start doing that, just beautiful things happen. Gratitude. I want to be a person of joy and gratitude. Deep belief that the Lord is good. Deep belief that the Lord is good. And guess what? Those things change who you are on the inside, and that changes your outside circumstances. So, for those of you right now who are not in the season that you want to be in your business, who feel like your business is a dead tree, I encourage you because I have been there. I am coming out of there. Two things: see yourself as a tree, digging your roots deep through the word, through community, lean into the Anthem community, lean into your team, the quality parts of your team. Um, and then, like, we just throw out the word personal growth, but it's so much more than that. Learning how to communicate, right? Reading good books that help you love others well and draw you closer to the Lord and draw you deeper into service. Those are the things that are going to increase your gravitational force. And then when you're ready, the Lord brings people into your circle. Just like back in the beginning, the Lord was bringing me people that I didn't even know. When I couldn't post online, when I couldn't talk to my sister-in-law because I respect my husband, the Lord has these people for you. What what we are called to do is to become the people that are ready for it. And so going back to my son, that's how I talk to him. I bug him all the time, like, what kind of man are you going to be? And he's like, a good man. I'm like, what does that look like? He's like, know Jesus and tell him the truth. I'm like, okay, what kind of wife do you want? It's like, an awesome one. Like, well, then you are going to have to be an awesome man. And it starts now. And friends, it's the same in our business. You want to have a big, amazing team. And I pray that you all do and that you lean into it, because the impact of that is going to ricochet into the heavens. But it starts with you, right? And so I guess that is pieces and so much of my journey all together. But it's the things that I've learned, and that if I could pour life into you guys, that I would really, that would be my prayer for you, is that God would be at work in you, creating you more into his image and into who he has created you to be, because that is the best thing you could ever do for your business. All right, Cassie, I talked a lot.
So good. Ah, girl, I loved all of it. And the fact that God had you in a place for several years, that he knew that he had to grow you in your business, but also in that town where you got to possibly meet people that you would have never met because he placed you there, a place you didn't. And I think this is the beautiful part of God's plan, is knowing it's God's plan, not ours. And so you had a plan of going somewhere else, and God's like, no, 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 I'm going to place you here for a little bit. I'm going to place you here.
And you know what's really crazy? The
Mhm.
ripple effect of that is we started a market. Our little town is like 11,000 people. There was no market. And so, again, showers and God ideas rule my life. I had the idea for a market. We now have about 400 people coming out once a month and 30 vendors. And do you want to know the ripple effect for the kingdom as we're getting to know these people? As all these people who don't know him are coming onto our land, and they literally are like, I just feel so much peace and joy here and creating connections. It would not have happened if I hadn't said yes to my company 8 years ago and
Correct.
we hadn't ended up here. But that ripple effect into the community has been so cool.
Yeah. I think my favorite story too of what you said is you seeing a moment that you could have missed, where all of us, I will say a lot of us, and I'll just claim all of us have done, to where we skip on a moment. You had that man say, God bless you. And you were like, wait, I want to know more. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
us will hear that, and we're too busy, or we don't, stop in that moment and say something, but you chose to. And that is beautiful about everybody's story, and reminding us that we need to find those little moments too, to say, tell me more. I see you're a believer. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we need in our society today in general, of just more strong believers willing to just have a conversation like that. So I want to open up and see if anybody has any questions about Alyssa's journey. Again, she's at the top of her company. She's growing an incredible business. And again, any business is up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And she has one girl that me and Julia absolutely love too. Her name is Ashley, and she is a hoot. She reminds me a lot of Ashley and myself. If you were combining the two, it's pretty much the same.
Ashley,
Yeah, Julia and Ashley. Yes, yes, combined. And anyway, but it's just the ripple effect, like she said, of the business of finding the people that are meant to be on her team. So would love
Mhm.
to open up if anybody has any questions for her. And because all of the ones that I had, you had answered a lot of them. And I'm like, oh, I love all of this. But I wanted to see if anybody else had questions. And then I'll ask. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, so you said you had to get your husband on board. What did that look
Mhm.
like, speaking with your husband, getting him on board with network marketing? And did that extend to other people? Because I know that you spoke on this about how not everybody is going to be, woohoo, let's go
Mhm.
with network marketing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with having that kind of testimony of getting your husband on board and then working this business, getting to the top of your company, how did you work through it with your husband? But how does that testimony of that transcend into the rest of your business?
Mm-hmm. Such a good question. So good. So I think for my husband, it was a super self-controlled slow drip. Like there were days I would want to rant, and there were days I would want to rejoice. And I would pick the rejoicing and I would shrink it so that I wasn't overwhelming. And she's like, oh, hey, remember I told you so and so was trying the products? They saw this and this. Great, huh? And he'd be like, oh, that's cool. And so it was a slow dripping of the success, right? And I have learned with husbands is they like to fix things. So I had to be very careful to not share for a while the down parts of my business and the struggles that I had. And that was really hard. But it forced me to turn to the Lord in those situations instead of my husband, right? If I was, heard something wrong, like there were definitely times I would go to him, but I had to be very careful that first year, right? To drip because I knew in my mind he doesn't understand, right? He doesn't have the framework that I have. He's not seeing the things. He's not in the community. Um, and then about 2 or 3 years in, I mean, paychecks make a difference. Let me tell you, when a husband starts seeing the money come in, and then when we could sit down at a table, I remember still telling him that, like, so the here's what I did. When I was starting to get really excited, I was like, you know what, honey? When I make $1,000 a month, I'm taking you deep sea fishing. In my mind, it's like $1,000 a month. Of course, I'll have enough money to go to deep sea fishing. Let me tell you, it disappears. Still hasn't happened. But he was like, of course you will. Great, honey. And that lit a fire in my heart. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to do this. Like, I want to show you that I can do this for you and the blessings that it'll be for you. And so it was little things like that. And then when I did make $1,000 a month, it blew his mind. And so that was definitely a shift for him because I had said I would and then I did. And one of the things I was also able to do is within a couple years, I was able to take my husband on a trip. And if you can take your husband on a trip, it makes so much difference. It was one where we were actually able to go straight to our company's headquarters. And there was just a handful of couples, and we got to sit and eat with our CEOs. And he actually pestered the questions. And he has told the CEO of our company, so I really don't like network marketing. And the CEO of our company said, me neither. That's why we're doing it different. And things went on from there. And that was a shift for him to be able to do that. So get your husband in the room whenever you can. That would be a big thing. Um, Moving on into the future, I think mostly it's just being able to help people know that even if their spouses aren't fully on board, to be grateful that they have a spouse, that they still have this opportunity, and that they can do both and love well through it. I'd say that's been the biggest thing. I haven't run into it too many times, which is really awesome. But it is, it does come up. Even in husbands that are supportive, they can feel a tension of their wife's time. They can feel a jealousy of their wife's time. Um, they could feel overwhelmed, especially when you're just all in, right? And so just to help wives be like, hey, you know what? It is okay to not word vomit everything that happened during your day and everything you learned on a Zoom and be wise. Be wise with your husbands. And so one thing that we're exposed to is a ton of personal growth stuff, right? Um, my husband's not getting that. And so to be aware of, okay, you know what? I am shifting and changing in ways that he might not be. How can I bring him along on the journey without making him feel like he is less than for not being where I am? And so little things like there's a couple audiobooks that didn't have anything specific to do with network marketing, but I was like, hey, honey, like, how would you like he got me a sauna for my 40th birthday. And so we sit in the sauna most evenings. It's like, hey, how would you like to do this audiobook? I think it'll really like you. You'd really appreciate it. Side note, it's a great one called Never Split the Difference by a FBI negotiator on negotiating. And so there's stories of kidnappings and rescues and all that. But the principles then my husband took into his job and started applying. And so there was able to be that, like, it was almost showing him a piece of what I do without and applying it for him in his situation. Did that answer your question?
It does. It makes sense. I feel the same. Like my husband's super, super supportive. So by no means is he one that's not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's so supportive to the point he's like, no, you have this. And I'm like, no, I just want you to be like, yeah, with me at the same time.
Oh yeah.
So, which is great. But I mean, he's come a long way in the time frame of doing this and stuff. My other part of that question though is more along the lines of with the testimony you have with network marketing,
Mm-hmm.
how has that helped you with people that you have, whether it's people that you've prospected or people that you've been able to get to join you? How has that been able to
Mm-hmm.
help? Have they listened to your voice on that, or is it still just the same type of
Yeah.
process walking through it?
A lot of the same stuff, right? There's a lot of people will still have the same objections, even though I can say the company that I'm with, and I think we're in the same company. Okay. I can say as much as I want, this is so different, but people still want to see it, and some people are still going to have to experience it, right? And so that can help as third-party validation because I can talk a few more details, right? I could say, hey, my dad worked really hard in this certain company, Legal Shield, and would build leaders, and then those leaders are taken away from him. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a lot of companies where if you grow a leader to a higher level than you, it's called a runaway leg, and they leave you forever. Yeah. So that happened to my dad. It's heartbreaking. It happened to my dad over and over again. And so what I had to discover was the same thing that it's really funny that they look at network marketing. So many people look at network marketing and they think of it as just one thing. And if there's one negativity, you're never going out. But who's ever never gone to a restaurant because they got food sickness at one restaurant? No, you go to another restaurant, right? Who's ever not gone to a restaurant because they had a bad waitress, right? And so I would say having stories like that is more effective even than my own testimonial, right? I mean, I can speak out of um, experience with that. But if I can relate it into a story of like, you know what, people who don't like network marketing, like, you know what, I totally understand. But I also know that, if you went to a restaurant and you had somebody burnt your toast or your overcooked your steak, maybe you wouldn't go back to that restaurant. But that doesn't mean that all restaurants are like that. Same as with network marketing. Would you be open to taking a look at how our company has chose to do things differently so that more people have a lot more success than I've ever seen before? Make sense? Conversations, curiosity, people. Like, curiosity is the opposite of doubt. We don't talk about it a heck of a lot, but it is the opposite of doubt. So every time that you are dealing with somebody who has a lot of doubt around their business, or you have those doubtful feelings, because we all got them, one of the things you can do is train your brain to say, okay, but what if I was curious? Right? And then asking people questions. Well, what if it's curious? What happened if I asked questions and I was curious in the situation? Um, and on the flip side of that, when you like back to your question about negative people who are really anti-network marketing, there's definitely a point where you just say, you know what? You are not adding value in my life. There are some negative things in your life, and God's going to have to work on those. I'm going to take a step back. And yes, I have unfriended people because every couple of years, for me, if I put up a post about, working on my weight journey, I've had people say, like on my post, be like, I thought your products were magic for weight loss. So why are you still dealing with it? And after 2 or 3 times, or like, that, like, here, read this book about how natural health is a scam. After a couple times, it's like, you know what? I don't actually know you. You have no space in my mind, no right to be playing with my mind. And I unfriended them. So we have the control to protect our heart and our mind and our mission and our vision for the Lord. And sometimes you're going to see as you're in your company, people are going to leave your company for what they think are greener pastures. This is me giving you permission to let them go freely and cut them off from your social media. Because guess what? Maybe 2 or 3 years later, you might want to catch up on what friends are doing. But for that first turnaround, you do not need somebody jetting doubt into your brain, right? Like it feels wrong because you're like, maybe they were a friend and you don't want to. But in reality, we have to protect our mind, we have to protect our belief, and we have to protect our vision. And I'm of the opinion that unless God shuts a door or incredibly shows like he did shutting the door to going to Colorado to land us in Weyburn, I will be a network marketer for my life because this is the path he's put me on. And there's going to be bumps and sideways, but unless there is a dramatic reason that he is going to shift me that doesn't come out of doubt or fear, because that is not a reason to do it, then I'm going to guard that against what the evil one would have pulling away. So that was a lot more than just a question.
So good. So good. And so much truth and so much goodness. It's like, you have the cake, but then you have the icing, and it's just you eat it all at that one time. That's what richness this has been. Um, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but you did an incredible job at sharing your story, but not even your story, the story God has placed inside of you that you've allowed him to do and have grown you. Could you imagine where you would be right now if you did not have this opportunity in your hands, and the growth that he wasn't able to use because you didn't say yes? And that's the beautiful part of all of us allowing our own journeys of saying yes so that God can use us in mighty beautiful ways. So I love it. And I can't wait to see more of your story keep unfolding. And I appreciate you so much for coming on, all of you. And again, if you have any other questions, I'm going to pop the recording up on the Anthem page. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask this, go into those comments and really ask, because I know Alissa will definitely share anything else that she's like, oh, I forgot this and I forgot that.
Oh, I'm going to be remembering things I forgot to say all night. So don't you
And
worry.
that's honestly all of us. Anytime we say something and we're like, there's so much faceted things to our story that got us to where we're at, but you shared exactly what was needed on this call tonight. And so I thank you for that. And I thank you for taking the time. And I thank you all for taking the time for tonight to pop on. So can't wait to keep highlighting a few more Anthem leaders every single month. So don't miss out as we're introducing new people to you, so you can hear a little glimpse into what God is doing in their story. So thank you guys so much for coming, Alissa. I love you. I'm so glad that you're here. And I will see you guys later. Bye, guys.